Hey everybody, and welcome to week 2 of the Seventh Valkyrie read-along and director's commentary, accompanying the launch of a Slanted reflection. Before we get into that, I wanted to take a brief moment to address something I mentioned a little bit last week. Things were getting crazy then, and they're even crazier now with what is really looking like a second civil rights movement. I actually debated really heavily on whether or not I was going to even post much, just because I felt like it was time to step back and let the voices who had something to say and a perspective speak on this be heard. But I also decided that in this time, the point of this whole movement is that everyone can share perspectives and their own visions and their own ideas and their own art, and that a world that is filled with many interesting ideas and perspectives and many different types of people is a better one, and that we should all support that. Right now, obviously I'm not from a group that necessarily needs more representation. That's something I've been very aware of since I was a very early age. But I don't know. I just think that where we all want to be is where everyone has their own perspective that they feel comfortable sharing, and that they're all supported, that they're all beautiful, and they all create this colorful, diverse, and wonderful world that we're all building towards. It shouldn't go without. It shouldn't need to be said, but it's a shame that in times like these, it's well, it shouldn't need to be said. It's something that it is something that shouldn't need to be said. But me, the Seventh Valkyrie, everyone affiliated with the Seventh Valkyrie organization, we stand with the Black Lives Matter movement. We stand with any movement and any push for civil rights, equality, freedom, and the beauty of people. That's kind of the fundamental value of the Seventh Valkyrie series. And in times like these, you would have thought that by now it wouldn't be necessary to even say that, but it is, and that's why there's such a push and such an upswelling of support and positivity, really, and protest, because we shouldn't need to be here, but we are, and so it feels. Like I said, I debated on whether or not to even continue with the director's commentary, but we said we would, and I figure that it's like even in times like this, we want to be reading and learning and consuming art, and and learning new things and highlighting the many things that make this world wonderful and beautiful, and so I decided we're gonna go ahead. That one more sort of bit of positivity, even though it's not directly supporting the kind of the big movement, is it's my own way to support. I don't necessarily have a perspective to offer to this to the movement. I have my own thoughts, my own feelings, and it's time for me to it's when it comes to social issues, it's just time to listen and to continue to learn and to really let voices be heard. And in the small ways, find a way that we can continue sharing our voices in a way that kind of sings in harmony. I think where we all want to be is not where we have to listen, we have to choose to listen to one voice or another, but where we have this kind of beautiful harmony of many different colors of people and diverse races and backgrounds and creeds and sexualities and religions, and we're not, it's like each of those voices is heard and makes this kind of wonderful life worth living. Anyway, that being said, onward into a Slanted reflection director's commentary for chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 5. Here we go. So this is only our second one. Going to go over a little bit of the format again. First off, new readers beware. I'm going to be going over spoilers like nobody's business, giving you the inside look behind the scenes of Slanted Reflection, which is fun if you've read the chapters, but less fun if you haven't. So there's my warning. Please read the book if you've not read the book yet. I'll be doing 3 chapters a week, and hopefully starting next week, I'll be posting midweek on social media looking for any questions that I can answer. I promise I'd do that this week, but things got a little crazy, just with job stuff and changing things around. More news on that at some point, maybe. For this week, though, we're looking at Chapter 3, Chapter 4, and Chapter 5. And we'll start with Chapter 3, Into the Wild. We really get to flesh out the Western Expanse in this one, which was kind of a geeky dream for me. My fandom of shows like Crocodile Hunter, The Jeff Corrin Experience, Planet Earth, and all things Discovery Channel and Animal Planet are just one part of the sort of deep love and nerdification that I have for wild places and animals, and getting to create like its own little ecosystem like this with all those little details and all those creatures was awesome. It reminds me of playing dinosaurs with my friends when I was like 6. We'd argue who was sort of the bigger, badder dinosaur, and then when we ran out of bigger and badder dinosaurs, we would just start making them up. And it was fun. There's something childish and wonderful about getting to just like come up with your own world. Yeah. So we also get to see a little bit more from Cyrus and C in this chapter. For the most part of Volume 0, they were just getting to kind of know each other, but now they've kind of gotten to the point where it's like, all right, they've settled in, they're kind of roommates in Cyrus's head now, and things are getting a little bit more familiar. And at some point, that's a good thing, because they kind of know each other better, but also the honeymoon period has worn off, and they are definitely starting to get on each other's nerves. Even as a little throwaway line, we also get to see our a little bit of emotion and real shit from C. Besides his previous character trait of just ruthlessly teasing Cyrus, and we see that really behind a wave of snark, there's a definite desire on his side to solve this mystery, which is kind of other than it's like we start to see a little more from him. All of this conflict between the two of them is, of course, moot compared to the current predicament in the heart of the Western Expanse. Although, continuing with the trend of kind of unraveling the complexities of this forest, we see not everything is trying to eat Cyrus and C, which makes sense because like a hyper-predatory ecosystem where everything ate everything else like with vengeance would be really hard to sustain on an ecological level. We get to see our first little tease into why the Western Expanse is such a powerful, dangerous forest with the arrival of the Floragons, those big, huge creatures. For whatever reason, they emanate force of life pretty much everywhere they go. So with every step, it's like boom, 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 and they're accelerating like the growth of fruits and plants and even the animals around them. And you see that like that's part of why this ecosystem is so rich and thriving, because it's like you have this kind of accelerator, these walking accelerators that drive this ecosystem faster and bigger and more crazy than anything that could possibly exist on Earth. And just like these ambling dreadnoughts exist, there are creatures that make use of them. And we have the Armorants. If you've ever seen a Zigzagoon, the Pokemon, these are kind of like hybrids between them and the normal otter, only much, much larger. Although I think the Zigzagoons were pretty freaking big in Pokemon, if I remember let me check the literature. But yeah, like, kind of, this forest is alive. Places in this series, I think, should always be characters sort of in and of themselves, and they offer just as much discourse to the story as their human counterparts. And with the arrival of the Armorants, you kind of have the Western Expanse kind of interacting with Cyrus. It's not just a place that he's walking through, it's providing something to drive him along. And Cyrus is sort of carried off deeper into the wilds of the Western Expanse. Ooh. Moving on to Chapter 4, Slanted Reflection. The longest chapter ever so far. And our introduction to Val in Volume 1. And this chapter really wanted to mirror Val's experience for you as the reader. When we last left him, he was setting off on the road to Min's, having held off most of the Edarans, but that feels like a long, long time ago now. He's been on the road for like 3 days straight, and he is brutally tired. Then, as these flashes of the past are all starting to rush back, he's slogging through an obnoxious checkpoint, through traffic, and then finally into the realization that the Edara he left behind is not the Edara that he has just rediscovered. A few times I actually played on cutting this one down, but nothing really worked with how Val would just have. He just has such a determination to get it done. Like there's no way he would have stopped. It wouldn't make any sense for him not to keep pounding all the way through. So I kind of took that opportunity to actually share kind of what he's going through with what you guys are going through. It's like this is a longer chapter, but Val struggles through that fight to the end. And as this chapter wraps up, we and Val are sort of left sitting in the back of the wagon going, oh my god, things are very different. They're not at all what I expected. We've seen this town. The hounds are confused. We had gotten a fight, and it's like, what is next? So, very harsh re-entry. Speaking of the town, I love the topography of Reen. It's one of my favorite things. The coasts north of Reen are kind of a hybrid of the stark Scandinavian coasts and the winding, rolling hills of the mountainside paths of like Cinque Terre and Tuscany. And they have like the moment where Val winds across a little dirt crushka field is actually a moment where the path that I was walking kind of cut through the halfway line of the soccer field. And it was like, this is just like the trail through the mountains. It's like, yeah, it just goes to the soccer field. But like, this is a place at the very edge of the ocean and the land where the storms and the winds and the rain coming off of Oceanus, the big ocean, gives the land a relatively stark and hard cut topography. That land kind of continues all the way down into the new city of Reen, but then all of a sudden you have these like smooth and rolling steps, like a giant Colosseum steps coming down. And I mean, you have to contrast that, against like what the land really should have looked like, naturally on the old city. And so you kind of have this weird mirror of, and that's part of one of the reasons the book is called A Slanted Reflection. That's one of the inspirations, was you have this one piece, one town that was built kind of around the land, and then one that was just enforced on it. And actually that difference has existed since some of the earliest iterations of Reen. Funnily enough, Reen actually has the record for being the oldest place in the Seventh Valkyrie series. Not like in universe necessarily. I'm talking about the fact that Reen as a town has existed in some form since my 5th grade draft of Shadow Strike. Now it only took the name of Reen in my first write through of Volume 1, the one that I ended up scrapping. But even then, it had quite a few epic set pieces. And like that town has existed as it has since my 5th grade draft of Shadow Strike, or at least some version of it. Now, what parts of that iteration have left behind? What parts have made it later into the story? What parts are coming up in Volume 2? Well, or even in Volume 1. Well, we'll have to figure it out. So, I'm checking over my notes. So the Edaran Society. So without going into too much detail, exploring the Edaran Society in all of its forms is a big part of the series, just like exploring all the other races is. And we definitely get to see a lot of what the Edarans are about, especially as Val kind of arrives in this town. There's a very distinct undercurrent of xenophobia, which some might argue is healthy when most people who are not Edaran have some pretty wild magical powers. And that kind of divide has hung around since the war, and honestly since a lot longer before. And they also definitely prefer man-made things over natural, which we definitely saw with how the town's built. We also see that the Edarans have a near-religious, well, I wouldn't even call it near-religious, they have a straight-up religious deference to the Iron Wolf, who was their hero during the war 7 years prior. And upon discovering this, it's when things start to get a little sticky for Val. We'll figure out why later, why Val disappeared after the war before eventually arriving in Darkstar and Nins. And in his absence, the stories of his exploits and his heroism, like as the young kid tells him, have clearly taken on a life of their own. Literally coming face to face with like a legend that has outgrown you, like when Val comes up and sees the statue, it's like is definitely a huge thing for Val this whole series. He's playing with this idea of what it means to be a man versus what it means to be a legend, and that's a very interesting. It's a very, very interesting kind of interplay that I get to mess around with. And speaking of the statue, one of my favorite lines in this chapter is, there's a reason I have a fucking statue. Still, after 3 days of little sleep, sheer confusion of seeing himself in carved metal, and outnumbered by 2 of the nation's top soldiers, Val still knows how to command a room, and he still knows how to kick ass. With the fight scenes, so that's a big thing in the series. I actually draw off a couple of elements. I take a lot of the storytelling aspects from the best parts of pro wrestling, which I could write a whole series on that. And I probably will write some blogs. Then I talk about the techniques and strategies, realism of like UFC, and then also the emotional beats of like anime fights. I love anime fights. I don't think anyone doesn't. Anyway, but like building a satisfying fight means you've got to build the stakes. It means you've got to build a formidable enemy for your hero to overcome. It means having twists and turns that you might not see coming, and it usually means a satisfying thing is like your guy coming out on top, or at least with some hope that he will in the future. You want to see him come out again. For me, the name of the game is to always leave something to look forward to in the next fight. For example, in this one, Val's set to win, but he's playing from behind, and he gets stabbed because he's afraid for his hounds. But he's got another trick up his sleeve, and we see exactly how tough he can be. So it's like he's beaten down, he's injured, he almost wins the fight, but he still gets tagged, and it's like, oh, what do we have to wait for from Val? Like, what will a full strength Val be like? So lots to look forward to from our Iron Wolf. And then finally, the final chapter for this little section, chapter 5, the Golden Waters. Number 1, yes, we have to eat and drink. One of the peskiest things as a writer is that your characters need like nourishment and stuff for it to be realistic. You can't just shove them wherever you want without any food or supplies or money or water. And it can kind of be a drag sometimes when you gotta like, oh shit, like have they eaten? When will they eat? Like, oh damn, like they need water. Like, so it's like always these little interesting challenges because you have to, if you want to be really realistic, and so but sometimes I actually end up coming up with cool, fun things that come out of that. Like the Golden Waters. I can't remember if these came out of a necessity or if they were. Sometimes these things just come together. But with the Golden Waters and the river as a whole, we step a little bit closer to uncovering what lies at the heart of the Western Expanse and exactly what makes this land so full of life. We talked about the Florgons a little bit earlier in this episode, but rather than being generators for like that life force and power, the Florgons are more like carriers for it. So they drink it in, they store it, and they sort of emanate it out as they walk. Now there are other benefits to that water power too. It rains down, it seeps into the ecosystem through the water cycle, and that's one of the real reasons. It's like because of the energy in the water, that's the real reason that this forest is thriving. So we're unraveling this mystery. That's why Cyrus can hold his breath for seemingly an indeterminate amount of time, and it's also what allows the things that live in the river to reach some truly unprecedented sizes, like the necklace-eyed muckmaws. Have you ever been like 5 years old and then found a picture of a lamprey when you weren't expecting it? Well, I did, and I wanted to share that horror with all of you. Now they're the size of 2 horses, and they have unblinking eyes and a necklace around their whole freaking body, and they can flop around on the ground and survive out of the water like mudfish. Yeah, you're welcome. When Cyrus is struggling to continue on at the end of this chapter after that attack, brutal attack. That's a very, very real echo of like some unresolved fear I have about lampreys. When I really want to put myself into a chapter, sometimes I can really just sink in. There's some that are easier than others. And when I can really put myself into a chapter sometimes if I need to. And for this one, it was like I really sunk in. And you better be ready. Be sure that I was ready to leave and get out of this once I finished writing it. Like friends, sometimes I'll be writing and I'll be crying along with Cyrus. Like I'll be really like putting myself there and experiencing it. And it's hard when you're like it's like muck monsters are scary as shit, dude. Like, have you seen a lamprey? Have you ever seen a lamprey? Look up the lamprey. In my blog, I had a picture of a lamprey. Look one up. They are horrifying. Now imagine one of those, like big. I hate it. I hate that I love coming up with these things that terrify me because if they terrify me, then I hope that they can terrify other people. And like there's something about being like scared that's kind of satisfying. But it's I don't like it. Anyway, but for all that happens, Cyrus pushes on further into the expanse, and that's kind of the end of chapter 5. So anyway, that wraps us up for this week. We will see you for the next one. You can leave either a comment here or on our midweek Facebook post, and I'll make sure to answer it. In the meantime, make sure that you've listened to or read Chapter 6, A Caged Hound, Chapter 7, Blackout, and Chapter 8, The Gears Turn, by next week. And we'll see you back. And to everyone who's out there listening, to everyone who's out there watching, in the ways that I can, I send you my love. The world, people who care are listening, and there's we're on the cusp of something changing. I think if you can't look around and see that there's a true, powerful feeling of change and power in the air right now, you're not listening because it's we're on the cusp of something. So anyway, in the meantime, stay safe, and again, in the words of Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other. Love you guys.